You know that feeling, right? That sort of simmering frustration when you're trying to get something simple done, maybe renew a permit or deal with some government office.
Hmm.
And you just hit this wall of endless paperwork or, baffling regulations. Or worse, you get that nagging suspicion that the system itself is, well, maybe a bit rigged.
Yeah, that sense that it's not quite working the way it's supposed to, or maybe it's working perfectly for someone else, just not for you.
Exactly. Maybe you've seen a huge public project that just swallowed a fortune but never quite delivered what was promised.
Or you hear whispers, about backroom deals that only seem to benefit a select few.
That feeling, that heavy sense of unfairness, it often stems from something really corrosive,
Mm.
corruption.
Mm.
So today we're taking a deep dive into exactly the fight against corruption, but, we're not just going to dwell on the problem itself.
Right. The idea is to really understand the solutions too.
Yes. We'll explore how some nations have managed to build incredibly resilient systems, making corruption not just illegal, but, well, practically an anomaly.
Looking at the success stories, basically, what makes them tick.
And then we'll turn our gaze to a nation grappling with some really persistent challenges, the Philippines, to see where the gaps are, and, maybe more importantly, what a clear path forward could actually look like.
So comparing the best practices with this specific case study.
Exactly. Our mission here, like always, is to unearth the most important nuggets of knowledge and insight from our detailed sources. We've got a deep examination of global best practices and a pretty comprehensive diagnostic of the Philippines' specific struggles.
And the aim is to give you, the listener, a shortcut to being really well informed on this absolutely critical subject.
Yeah, maybe with some surprising facts along the way, and hopefully a clear pathway to understanding what truly works. Because, let's be honest, this isn't just about global governance theory or the specifics of one country.
No, it impacts everyone, really.
This deep dive is essential for you, the listener, to grasp the mechanics of accountability, what actually drives real, lasting change in societies, and, the universal principles that underpin good governance everywhere.
It's about arming you with knowledge that kind of transcends borders, showing how integrity, or, well, the lack of it, really shapes nations.
Okay, so let's unpack this. When we look at nations like Denmark, Finland, New Zealand, and Singapore, these countries consistently sit right at the top of Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index.
Yeah, those scores are really impressive. Denmark hitting 90, Finland 87, New Zealand 85, Singapore 83. Out of 100. That's remarkable consistency.
It really is. So what exactly are they doing right? It's pretty clear their success isn't built on just one clever policy or, a single magic institution.
No, definitely not a silver bullet situation. What our research shows is more like a deeply integrated ecosystem. It's got these mutually reinforcing pillars.
Okay, an ecosystem. And across all of them, there seem to be these universal prerequisites, right? Things you just have to have.
Absolutely. Unwavering political will, a truly robust rule of law, and a pervasive culture of transparency. These aren't just nice-to-haves. They are the absolute foundations.
So that's the bedrock.
What's truly fascinating, though, is that while the form of their anti-corruption institutions might vary quite a bit, they don't all look the same. Their core functions are remarkably consistent.
Ah, okay. So how they're set up might differ, but what they do is similar.
Exactly. They all effectively deter, detect, investigate, and crucially punish corruption. And they do this within a framework that genuinely instills public trust.
That trust part sounds key.
It is. It really emphasizes that there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution, but rather these underlying principles that get successfully applied in really diverse contexts. It's about the spirit of the law. Not just the letter, hashtag, the bedrock of political will and a coherent national strategy.
So when we look at these top-performing nations, where do they even begin? It seems like the absolute foundation, the most critical ingredient, is something you can't always see or touch. It's this bedrock of political will, right? And a truly coherent national strategy.
That's spot on. It's not just about leaders making a speech declaring war on corruption. It's a foundational commitment that actually translates into clear, coherent, and importantly, well-resourced action. It has to be real.
And what's interesting is how this strategic intent, this deep commitment, can manifest in really different ways across these countries.
Absolutely. Take Singapore, for instance. Their anti-corruption drive wasn't just, a policy choice. It was framed as a strategic imperative right from the very beginning, post-independence.
Strategic imperative sounds serious.
It was. The government and its leaders personally demonstrated a zero-tolerance culture. They genuinely viewed eradicating corruption as absolutely essential for national survival and economic development.
So it was existential for them.
Pretty much. Now, this wasn't necessarily codified in some fancy formal strategy document way back then, but it was ruthlessly executed through powerful legislation like the Prevention of Corruption Act, the PCA, and the creation of a really formidable independent anti-corruption agency.
The famous CPI?
That's the one.
Yeah.
And this unwavering top-down imposition of a zero-tolerance culture was, in many ways, more powerful than any formal plan could ever have been. It was about survival.
That's a powerful example. Intent really overriding formal structure. A genuine, almost existential commitment. Now, Finland seems quite different, doesn't it? Much more collaborative, more systematic.
That's right, a very different flavor. In Finland, anti-corruption efforts are coordinated by their Ministry of Justice, but it's done through this sophisticated national cooperation network.
A network, so not just one agency.
No. And this isn't just government departments talking amongst themselves. It actively brings together various ministries, law enforcement agencies, the private sector, and even NGOs.
Okay, getting everyone involved.
Exactly. And this network is specifically tasked with developing and implementing formal national anti-corruption strategies, like their 2021-2023 plan, for example. These are comprehensive documents.
And they link it to other things too, right?
Critically, yes.
Yes.
It explicitly links Finland's domestic anti-corruption work to broader international commitments, things like the UN Sustainable Development Goals and OECD recommendations.
Ah, so it's integrated.
Totally. It signifies a truly mature, whole-of-government commitment to systematically identifying risks and coordinating a multi-sectoral response. It's all about shared responsibility and having a clear, publicly available roadmap for action.
And then you have New Zealand, which offers a bit of maybe a cautionary tale. It shows you can't just rest on your reputation, even if you're a top performer.
Indeed. It's a bit like a top athlete who suddenly stops training, right? For many years, New Zealand rode high on its reputation. They didn't really have a formal national anti-corruption strategy, mostly relying on a presumed high level of public trust.
You just assumed they were okay.
Sort of. But what we've seen in our research is a gradual decline in its CPI score, coupled with reports from advisory groups indicating that corruption is growing and, quite alarmingly, being weaponized by organized crime.
Wow, weaponized. That sounds serious.
It is. And this spurred a crucial shift. They've recently launched an anti-corruption task force pilot program and are developing a national counter-fraud and corruption strategy.
So they're reacting now.
Exactly. It shows a reactive but necessary move toward a more structured and proactive framework. They're acknowledging that a strong reputation cannot be taken for granted.
Good lesson there.
It underscores that even the best systems need to continually evolve and adapt to emerging threats. No one is immune to complacency.
So even if you're doing well, stay vigilant. Now, Denmark is fascinating because their culture of integrity seems so deeply embedded that historically they didn't even think a standalone strategy was necessary. It's like it's part of their national DNA.
It really seems that way. Denmark's administrative culture is characterized by such deeply embedded principles of integrity and transparency that, yeah, for a long time, a formal, explicit strategy wasn't seen as essential.
How does that work in practice?
Well, their system thrives on a very high degree of openness. For instance, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs proactively publishes all cases of suspected misuse of funds involving its aid programs. They put it out there without even being asked.
That's real transparency.
It demonstrates a commitment to public scrutiny by default. However, even in this high-performing context, the OECD has flagged the lack of a centralized strategy as a potential area for improvement.
Oh, really? Even for Denmark?
Yeah, especially concerning the regulation of lobbying and maybe harmonizing internal audit functions across government. It suggests that while their organic culture of integrity is powerful, even they might benefit from formalizing certain strategic elements to address emerging vulnerabilities, especially in today's complex political landscapes.
Okay, so it sounds like the written strategy itself isn't the silver bullet. It's the underlying spirit, that genuine commitment. But couldn't a lack of a formal document, like Denmark's traditional approach, potentially leave them exposed or make it harder to adapt to new forms of corruption?
That's a really crucial point. The critical lesson isn't just about whether a country has a formal written strategy. It's the strategic intent that truly underpins its anti-corruption efforts.
Right, the why behind it all.
Exactly. Singapore's success was built on that foundational political mandate, decades before formal strategy documents were really the norm. New Zealand's recent experience clearly shows that even top performers need to continually evolve their approach to be proactive rather than just reactive.
So what's the takeaway here?
For any country, like the Philippines perhaps, that has seen numerous anti-corruption plans kind of fail on paper, the fundamental issue likely isn't a lack of planning documents. It's often a lack of that deep, unwavering political will and that systematic cross-sectoral commitment. You need the intention and the mechanism to adapt over time. Hashtag, tag, empowered and independent institutions.
Okay, that leads us perfectly into the next critical component, empowered and independent institutions. Because a credible national strategy, no matter how well intended, needs institutions with the actual power, the independence, and importantly, the resources to act without fear or favor, as they say.
Precisely. And what we see is that while the institutional architecture and the actual setup for fighting corruption varies significantly among these top-performing countries, the bodies responsible for enforcement are always effectively empowered and, crucially, insulated from political interference.
Insulation seems key.
It's vital. And this is where we see some striking differences in approach, yet they all share that common, crucial goal. Singapore's Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau, the CPIB, is almost the archetype, isn't it? A powerful, centralized, independent anti-corruption agency.
Yeah, it has a fearsome reputation.
And for good reason. Its independence is actually constitutionally guaranteed. What's truly remarkable here isn't just that the CPIB director reports directly to the Prime Minister.
What else is there?
They possess this extraordinary right. They can appeal directly to the President if the head of government tries to obstruct an investigation.
Wow, appeal over the PM's head.
Exactly. This isn't just a strong reporting line. It's a constitutional failsafe. It's designed to prevent even the highest office from derailing a probe. It's a clear statement. No one is above the law.
And they have serious powers too, right?
Oh, yes. The Prevention of Corruption Act grants the CPI extensive investigative powers, authority to arrest without a warrant, access pretty much any financial accounts, compel testimony from anyone.
So it sounds like a true anti-corruption SWAT team. And its jurisdiction is all-encompassing, covering both public and private sectors. Plus, if they uncover other crimes during a corruption probe, they can go after those too.
That's right. It's a total approach that really prevents criminals from playing jurisdictional games or finding loopholes. It's about leaving no stone unturned and no escape routes.
Okay, that's the centralized powerhouse model. Now, Finland offers a starkly decentralized model, you said.
Completely different. There's no single dominant anti-corruption agency like the CPI. Instead, the Ministry of Justice coordinates that network of existing institutions we mentioned, each with its specialized role.
So, using what they already have, but making them work together.
Precisely. This includes the National Bureau of Investigation for the police work, the Prosecution Service for establishing criminal liability, and the National Audit Office for independent oversight of things like political financing and lobbying.
How does that work effectively without one central command?
Well, the effectiveness of this networked approach is built on a foundation of high interagency trust, seamless information sharing, and a shared administrative culture of integrity.
Trust again. Seems crucial in the Nordic model.
Very much so. It's less about a single powerful agency and more about a collaborative ecosystem, almost like a carefully orchestrated symphony of integrity, if you like.
I like that, a symphony of integrity. And New Zealand also uses a multi-agency framework, but with more of a focus on specialization.
Yes, New Zealand relies on highly specialized bodies. The Serious Fraud Office, the SFO, is an independent entity dedicated to investigating and prosecuting serious and complex financial crime, including high-level corruption.
So they handle the really big, complicated stuff.
Exactly. Its specialization allows it to develop deep technical expertise in areas like forensic accounting, which is vital for those cases. Alongside the SFO, other independent bodies ensure integrity in specific sectors, like the Independent Police Conduct Authority for the Police Force and the Office of the Judicial Conduct Commissioner for Judges.
So different specialists for different parts of the problem.
Right. This model prioritizes specialization, and its success really hinges on strong coordination among these distinct agencies.
And then Denmark, again, with its unique approach of having no central anti-corruption body at all, how does that even work effectively? It sounds risky.
It does sound counterintuitive, doesn't it? Denmark truly represents the most decentralized model. The responsibility for upholding integrity is basically distributed across the public administration itself, with the Ministry of Justice ensuring cooperation.
So it's just expected everywhere.
Pretty much. This system is predicated on an exceptionally high level of public trust, in institutions, and a deeply ingrained culture where integrity is simply the default norm. People just expect things to be done correctly.
But didn't the OECD have some concerns there too?
They did. While it's largely effective, the OECD flagged this model for lacking certain central oversight functions, especially in regulating lobbying and maybe harmonizing internal control and audit standards across government.
Ah, okay.
It shows that even a high-trust system can have blind spots or areas that might need formalizing as society and, political influence get more complex.
So what's the big takeaway from all these diverse institutional models? It really sounds like function over form is absolutely key. Centralized, decentralized, both can work if they actually get the job done.
Absolutely. The success of these varied institutional models underscores that function over form principle in anti-corruption design. There's no single best organizational structure that every country should just copy and paste.
Right, context matters.
Hugely. Singapore's centralized, almost fear-based model works within its unique political and historical context. Meanwhile, the Nordic countries' decentralized, trust-based models thrive in their own societal environments.
So what's the common thread then?
The critical variable is not the organizational chart, but the effective fulfillment of those core functions: independent investigation, credible prosecution, and proactive prevention. The common denominator is empowerment and insulation.
Empowerment and insulation. Got it.
Whether centralized or decentralized, the system has to grant the relevant bodies, the legal authority, the financial resources, and the political independence to fulfill their mandates without interference. That's the secret sauce, really. #, a fortified rule of law.
Okay, that brings us neatly to the next critical element, a fortified rule of law. This pillar really emphasizes that a specialized anti-corruption agency, no matter how powerful or well-resourced like Singapore's CPIB, can't succeed in a vacuum, can it?
No, absolutely not. The broader justice system, encompassing the judiciary and law enforcement, must function as an impartial and effective enforcer of the rule of law itself.
It's like needing healthy soil for a plant to grow. The ecosystem needs to be healthy.
That's a great analogy. And this is truly a foundational aspect. A universal feature across Denmark, Finland, New Zealand, and Singapore is the remarkably low perceived risk of corruption within their judicial and police systems.
So people trust the judges and the police.
Overwhelmingly, yes. Public and expert surveys consistently indicate that bribery in exchange for favorable court judgments or, to evade police action is virtually non-existent. This high level of integrity in these fundamental institutions is the bedrock upon which all other anti-corruption efforts are built.
And we see the opposite elsewhere, right? Weak justice systems linked to more corruption.
Definitely. The 2023 CPI Global Report explicitly links the weakening of justice systems worldwide to a corresponding rise in corruption. It underscores just how absolutely vital this pillar is. If your judges and police can be bought, frankly, everything else just falls apart.
So how do they manage to maintain such a high level of integrity in these critical institutions? What are the practical mechanisms they use?
Well, it's maintained through robust mechanisms that ensure accountability and meritocracy. New Zealand, for instance, has that independent police conduct authority to investigate complaints against the police, and the Office of the Judicial Conduct Commissioner to handle allegations against judges.
So oversight for the overseers.
Exactly, ensuring these powerful institutions are themselves subject to rigorous oversight. In Denmark, the judiciary's independence is reinforced by a merit-based appointment and promotion process. Judges there report very little experience of inappropriate external pressure.
Merit-based, not politically connected.
Right. Similarly, Finland's police and judiciary are consistently ranked by citizens as being among the nation's least corrupt institutions. That reflects a deep public confidence in their impartiality. It's a continuous commitment to integrity from within these institutions.
It sounds like a virtuous cycle then, doesn't it? Integrity feeds trust, trust enables enforcement, and then enforcement reinforces integrity.
Precisely. This institutional integrity translates directly into effective enforcement. In Denmark, for example, the government is widely recognized for its effective implementation and enforcement of anti-corruption laws. They actually do it.
And New Zealand.
In New Zealand, there are effective mechanisms in place to investigate and punish police abuse or corruption, ensuring that impunity doesn't take root. This creates that powerful virtuous cycle. Institutional integrity builds public trust, which legitimizes and enables effective enforcement, which in turn deters corruption and reinforces the integrity of the entire system.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for me. That immune system analogy we touched on earlier. It's so powerful, isn't it? It means you can't just fix one part of the body politic, so to speak.
Exactly. You can have the best anti-corruption agency in the world, the special forces of the system, maybe. But if the broader justice system, the nation's immune system, is compromised,
Then the special forces are kind of useless.
pretty much. If judges can be bought or police can be paid to sabotage investigations, then those special forces are essentially futile. A corrupt judiciary can simply dismiss well-founded cases on technicalities. Corrupt police can lose crucial evidence, intimidate witnesses, or tip off suspects.
It's a fundamental vulnerability.
Absolutely. The effectiveness of an agency like Singapore's CPIB or New Zealand's SFO is directly contingent on the integrity of the police forces and court systems they have to work with.
And the implication for other countries trying to reform is huge.
It's profound. Because if your immune system is compromised, even the strongest, most targeted interventions, the best new laws or agencies, will struggle to gain any real traction. It's a total body problem. Hashtag the architecture of transparency and accountability.
Okay, let's move to the fourth pillar, the architecture of transparency and accountability. This one focuses on the specific legal and policy tools that create such a transparent environment that corruption becomes, well, hard to hide and inherently risky to even attempt.
Exactly. These mechanisms aren't just punitive looking backwards. They are designed to be proactive and preventive. They actively shape the behavior of public officials and foster a culture of openness.
Proactive and preventive. So what are some key tools here? Whistleblower protection seems like a big one.
Indeed. Robust whistleblower protection is a cornerstone of this architecture. Denmark's Whistleblower Act, for example, is incredibly comprehensive. It requires all companies with more than 50 employees to establish internal reporting channels and provides whistleblowers with strong legal protection against any form of retaliation.
So you can report internally first, safely.
Yes. Similarly, New Zealand's Protected Disclosures Act shields individuals in both public and private sectors who report serious wrongdoing. It grants them immunity from civil and criminal proceedings related to their disclosure and provides clear legal recourse if their employer retaliates against them.
Immunity and legal recourse, that's strong protection.
It's about empowering those on the inside, the people who truly see what's happening, to speak up safely without fear of losing their livelihoods or, worse.
So it's about protecting the messengers, basically making it safer to do the right thing. What about asset and interest disclosure regimes? Declaring what you own, how do these countries handle that?
These are absolutely critical tools for preventing conflicts of interest. In Finland, high-level public officials, ministers, MPs, judges, are required to submit detailed declarations of their financial interests.
Do they check them?
Well, the OECD did note a potential weakness in the lack of a specific verification process there, but the very act of public disclosure serves as a significant deterrent in itself.
Okay, and Singapore, I bet they're strict.
Oh, Singapore employs a particularly stringent system, as you'd expect. Public officials undergo rigorous security vetting that includes annual and sometimes ad hoc declarations of their assets and financial positions. And their rules on gifts are exceptionally strict.
Who's strict?
Any gift valued at more than 50 Singapore dollars, that's about 35-40 US dollars, must be declared. And if the official wants to keep it, they have to purchase it from the government at its independently assessed market value.
Purchase it back.
Wow. Yeah. It eliminates any gray areas. It makes it very clear that public office is not an opportunity for personal enrichment. You can't even accept a nice bottle of wine without potentially having to buy it back from the state.
Yeah, that's a very clear line indeed. Okay, and how do these countries handle the thorny issue of money in politics? Campaign finance and lobbying.
Yeah, the regulation of money in politics is a third key area for transparency. Finland's Political Parties Act mandates the public disclosure of all campaign donations above a set threshold, with the National Audit Office serving as an independent overseer.
So you can see who's funding whom.
Exactly. And Finland also recently implemented a lobbying register to increase transparency and political influence, letting the public know who is trying to influence policy decisions behind the scenes.
That seems increasingly important. What about Denmark?
Denmark's Political Parties Funding Act defines clear sanctions for breaches of campaign finance regulations, holding candidates personally liable. However, it's worth noting that the lack of comprehensive lobbying regulation in Denmark is seen as a significant gap by the OECD.
Ah, so even top performers have areas for improvement.
Absolutely. Especially as forms of political influence evolve, it shows the need for constant vigilance.
And finally, just a general commitment to making public information, well, public, broad openness.
Yes, a strong commitment to transparency of public information underpins the entire system. All four countries have robust legal frameworks and administrative traditions that guarantee public access to government information, freedom of information laws, and such.
Is it just reactive, like you have to ask for it?
Often it's proactive, not just reactive. We mentioned Denmark's Ministry of Foreign Affairs publishing details on suspected misuse of aid funds. That ensures problems are exposed to public scrutiny as a matter of policy, not just hidden away until someone specifically requests the info. That's incredibly powerful.
What's truly fascinating here is how these tools don't just punish, they actively shape behavior, making corruption inherently riskier and much harder to pull off.
You could say the primary power lies in prevention rather than reaction. Think about it. Asset declaration systems aren't designed merely to prosecute officials after the fact.
Right, their main purpose is up front.
Exactly. It's to identify and manage potential conflicts of interest before they can even lead to a corrupt act. An official who has publicly declared a stake in a company is far less likely to make a regulatory decision that improperly benefits that company, right?
Makes sense. The sunlight disinfects.
And likewise, robust whistleblower protection laws fundamentally alter the risk-reward calculation for potential wrongdoers. If there's a higher chance you'll get caught because someone inside might talk, you might think twice. This proactive nature of transparency is a crucial lesson for any nation serious about fighting corruption.
Okay, so to quickly summarize these global best practices before we shift focus to the Philippines, we've seen that while structures and specific implementations differ quite a bit across Denmark, Finland, New Zealand, and Singapore, the underlying principles seem universal.
That's right. We're talking about unwavering political will, empowered and truly independent institutions, a fortified rule of law, and this robust architecture of transparency and accountability.
Those are the core tenets, the common denominators, in building a truly corruption-resilient state. It's not just one thing, it's a complete ecosystem. Okay, now let's transition. We've looked at these global blueprints for success. Now let's look at the reality on the ground in the Philippines. With a 2023 Corruption Perceptions Index score of just 34 out of 100, ranking it 115th among 180 countries. Wow. The Philippines faces a challenge that is both severe and systemic.
Yeah, that score and ranking paint a pretty stark picture. It signals deep, persistent problems.
So our mission now is to conduct a critical gap analysis using those four pillars we just discussed: political will, institutions, rule of law, transparency as our framework to assess the country's specific vulnerabilities, its institutional failures, and its policy deficiencies.
We're essentially shining a spotlight using those benchmarks to see where the system is breaking down in the Philippine context.
So what does corruption look like in the Philippines? What's the nature and scope of it?
Well, our deep dive reveals that corruption in the Philippines isn't just, an occasional problem or limited to certain sectors. It's described as deeply entrenched, almost a feature of the political and economic landscape.
Entrenched. Okay.
It's a pervasive phenomenon, manifesting at pretty much all levels from the lowest rungs of the bureaucracy, think local permits or licenses, to the highest echelons of power, like major government contracts or legislation. It seems to be part of the fabric.
So what forms does this corruption take? Is it all just politicians stealing large sums, or is it more varied?
Oh, the forms are incredibly diverse and really widespread. They range from petty bribery, which Filipinos colloquially call lagay or grease money.
Grease money. Okay.
Yeah, basically small payments to speed things up or get basic services. This is apparently common in frontline agencies like the Bureau of Internal Revenue or the Bureau of Customs. A huge source of frustration for ordinary citizens just trying to get by.
And then the other end of the scale.
Then you have grand corruption. This involves the plunder and malversation of public funds on a truly massive scale, often involving high-ranking officials.
And beyond bribery and theft.
The landscape is further defined by systemic practices like cronyism, nepotism, patronage, basically favoring friends, family, and political allies. And perhaps most damaging, a pervasive culture of impunity.
Impunity meaning?
Meaning the powerful rarely face any real consequences for their actions, even when wrongdoing is exposed. This emboldens further corruption.
Are there specific areas that are known to be particularly high risk?
Yes. Public procurement is frequently cited. Government contracts, infrastructure projects fraud is notoriously common there. The judicial system is another area often flagged for influence peddling, where connections or money can potentially warp the outcome of cases.
So it's not just about a few bad apples then. It sounds like deeply embedded societal and historical factors are at play. What are those roots? Where does this come from?
Exactly. The roots of this problem are complex. really deeply embedded in the nation's history and its socio-political structure. Academic analyses point to a confluence of cultural and structural factors.
Like what, culturally?
Culturally, there's the concept of palakazan. It's this deep reliance on personal and familial connections to navigate bureaucracy and gain advantage. You could think of it as who you know being far more important than what you know.
Okay, using connections.
And the problem is how that can unfortunately blur the lines between what might be seen as acceptable social practice in some contexts and outright corrupt behavior in public office.
And structurally, what about the system itself?
Structurally, some analyses point to the early introduction of democratic elections during the American colonial period, but without strong corresponding institutions of accountability being built at the same time.
Ah, elections without checks and balances.
Kind of. The argument is that this led to the capture of the state by a narrow political and economic elite, institutionalizing a logic of rent-seeking, basically using public office for private enrichment right from the start.
Interesting. Any other historical factors?
Well, the long colonial experience under Spain is also sometimes cited as fostering an instrumental and often adversarial relationship between the citizenry and the state. This legacy can unfortunately undermine public trust and civic engagement even today. People might see the state as something other, something to be exploited rather than participated in.
Wow, that sounds like a really deeply pessimistic narrative. But our research also uncovers a crucial counterpoint, right? It's not all doom and gloom.
That's absolutely vital to acknowledge, and it's really where hope lies. Despite this deeply ingrained narrative of corruption, the Philippines has a vibrant and powerful tradition of anti-corruption movements.
Ah, yes, the people power revolutions.
Exactly. Those revolutions that famously ousted corrupt leaders are potent symbols of a public that has at times become progressively less tolerant of the abuse of power.
So there's pushback from the people.
Yes. This constant struggle between systemic corruption and popular anti-corruption fervor indicates that while the challenges are immense, there exists a significant social and political asset for reform. A citizenry that, when mobilized, has demonstrated its capacity to demand accountability. This popular will is a powerful force for change and something that reformers can potentially build upon. #, institutional gap analysis against global benchmarks.
Okay, so let's dive into the institutional gap analysis now, measuring the Philippines against those global benchmarks we discussed. We should probably start with the Office of the Ombudsman. On paper, it sounds powerful, but what's the reality, especially when you compare it to Singapore's CPIB or Finland's networked approach?
Right. On paper, the Philippine Office of the Ombudsman looks incredibly formidable. It's often cited as one of the most powerful anti-graft bodies globally, constitutionally speaking.
How so? What powers does it have?
Well, the 1987 Constitution and its enabling law, Republic Act 670, created it as an independent constitutional office. Its mandate is expansive. It's tasked as the protector of the people. It possesses broad investigatory and prosecutorial powers over all public officials.
Like what kind of powers?
It can access bank records, issue subpoenas, compel testimony, and crucially file cases directly with the Sandigan-Bayan, which is the country's special anti-graft court. So, yeah, it looks formidable on paper.
That sounds incredibly robust, very similar to some of the benchmark institutions.
Yeah.
So where does the disconnect occur in practice? Why isn't it consistently delivering the results that its mandate suggests it should?
Yeah, that's the core issue. In practice, the Ombudsman's performance has been incredibly inconsistent over the years, and its effectiveness is, frankly, deeply contested.
How do we measure that inconsistency?
Well, a key metric is its conviction rate for the cases it prosecutes at the Sandigan-Bayan. This rate has been incredibly volatile. We've seen it swing wildly. I think it was reported over 70% in 2023, but then it plummeted to around 30% just the year before, and in earlier periods, it was sometimes down in the teens.
Wow, that's a huge variation. What does that signal?
Well, this kind of inconsistency doesn't just raise eyebrows. It casts a real shadow on the quality and reliability of the cases being filed, or perhaps the effectiveness of the prosecution itself. The institution has long been plagued by challenges.
Such as?
Insufficient resources compared to international counterparts is often mentioned. Perceptions of political influence in its appointments and decisions, which obviously undermines public trust. And maybe most critically, debilitatingly long delays in resolving high-profile cases. Justice delayed is justice denied, right?
Absolutely. Years and years sometimes.
And that severely undermines accountability. There was a comparative study mentioned in our sources that starkly highlighted this. It noted that while Indonesia's Anti-Corruption Commission, the KPK, achieved a near 100% conviction rate against top officials in its first 5 years.
100%. Wow.
Yeah. The Philippine Ombudsman, despite being around much longer, has struggled for decades to secure significant convictions against the most powerful political figures.
Okay. So if we connect this to the bigger picture, what's the lesson?
It really highlights that a strong mandate on paper doesn't guarantee real-world effectiveness. You need consistent, unwavering execution, adequate resources, and crucially strong insulation from external political pressures. The power on paper means very little if it can't be consistently applied with integrity and independence.
That immune system analogy we keep coming back to, it resonates even more strongly here, doesn't it? If the very institutions meant to protect are compromised, everything else struggles. Let's talk about the broader justice system, what you called the country's compromised immune system. How does the judiciary stack up?
Yeah, the weaknesses of the ombudsman are unfortunately compounded by the frailties of the broader justice system. It just fails to provide that supportive, high-integrity environment that any anti-corruption agency needs to succeed. Frankly, based on various reports and surveys cited, the judiciary is widely perceived as a very high-risk area for corruption itself.
High risk. In what way?
Reports and business surveys consistently indicate that things like bribery, irregular payments for favorable decisions, favoritism, and nepotism are perceived as common. This severely undermines procedural fairness and the rule of law itself.
So the perception is that justice can be bought.
While formally independent, the judiciary is often seen as susceptible to influence from the rich and powerful, who might be able to manipulate civil and criminal proceedings. Chronic underfunding, a lack of resources, and relatively low salaries for judicial officials are also frequently cited as factors that perpetuate a cycle of bribery and corruption.
So it's a stark contrast to the trusted judiciaries in places like Denmark or New Zealand.
Very stark contrast, yes.
And the police. Law enforcement is such a crucial part of that immune system, really the first line of defense. What's the situation there according to the research?
Absolutely critical. But unfortunately, law enforcement, specifically the Philippine National Police, or PNP, is described as being plagued by a deep crisis of public trust.
A crisis of trust? That's serious.
It is. It's widely regarded, based on surveys and reports, as one of the country's most corrupt institutions. Widespread reports detail the involvement of police, and sometimes military personnel, in extortion, local rackets, protection schemes, and various other criminal activities.
So businesses can't rely on them.
Businesses consistently report that they cannot rely on the police for protection. I think one source mentioned over half actually resort to paying for private security because they don't trust the public force.
Wow. And the impact on anti-corruption efforts.
This systemic corruption within law enforcement doesn't just victimize citizens directly. Crucially, it fatally undermines the anti-corruption process from its very inception. Think about it. Investigations can be deliberately sabotaged. Critical evidence can be tampered with or conveniently lost. Witnesses can be intimidated or worse. This makes it nearly impossible for even the most dedicated prosecutor or ombudsman investigator to build a successful case against powerful, corrupt individuals who might have connections within the force.
So the compromised immune system really does render the specialized forces like the ombudsman almost ineffective in many cases.
It creates enormous, sometimes insurmountable, obstacles. It's a fundamental weakness in the entire chain of accountability. Hashtag Joe Young legislative and policy deficiencies.
Okay, moving on to legislative and policy deficiencies. This is where we look at the actual laws and rules. And here it seems we see frameworks that are either riddled with loopholes or, perhaps more alarmingly, have been actively undermined to prevent accountability. Let's start with the SASO.
Ah, yes, the SAN, Statement of Assets, Liabilities, and Net Worth.
It's supposed to be a powerful tool for transparency, right? But the analysis suggests it's effectively been neutered.
That's a very apt description, almost like someone deliberately pulling its teeth. The requirement for all public officials to file a SAN is, on paper, a powerful anti-corruption tool. It's enshrined in the Philippine Constitution itself and detailed in Republic Act 6713.
And the point is transparency.
Exactly. The law explicitly mandates that these documents be made available for public inspection. That provides a critical mechanism for citizens, journalists, watchdog groups to detect unexplained wealth, potential conflicts of interest, basically, signs of corruption.
Okay, so how was it neutered?
Well, this vital transparency mechanism was effectively crippled in 2020. The Office of the Ombudsman issued something called Memorandum Circular Number 1, and this circular severely restricted public access to the assailants held in its custody.
Restricted how?
Under this circular, a copy of an official's assaillant can generally only be released with the official's own consent.
Wait, the official has to agree to let the public see their asset declaration.
Essentially, yes, for Salins held by the ombudsman. Which, of course, makes independent scrutiny of a potentially corrupt official virtually impossible. Why would they consent if they have something to hide?
So it went from being a public accountability tool to essentially a private record, shielded by the very person it's supposed to hold accountable. That sounds like a catastrophic reversal.
Exactly. This move was widely condemned by legal experts and civil society groups as potentially unconstitutional and a direct assault on public accountability. It transforms the SALN from a public document meant for public scrutiny into a private record shielded from that scrutiny.
And this goes against international best practice.
Completely. It's in direct opposition to global evidence, which clearly shows that it is public disclosure, not just confidential filing, that is strongly associated with lower levels of perceived corruption and better governance outcomes. It's truly a catastrophic failure of prevention. It's not just a weakness. It feels like an active subversion of transparency.
Okay, that's sobering. Next, whistleblower protection. It sounds like the Philippines has a fragmented and inadequate shield for those who bravely speak out, especially when you compare it to the robust protections we saw in Denmark and New Zealand.
That's correct. The Philippines currently lacks a single overarching whistleblower protection act. Instead, those who expose wrongdoing have to navigate this confusing and often inadequate patchwork of legal provisions scattered across different laws.
Like what? Is there anything?
Well, the primary mechanism often cited is the Witness Protection Program under RA 6981. But that was primarily designed to protect witnesses who are already testifying in court proceedings.
Ah, so after a case is filed.
Right. Not necessarily employees or citizens who report misconduct within an organization or to authorities before a case is even filed. And this creates a critical gap in protection.
Why is that timing so important?
Because the greatest risk of retaliation, getting fired, harassed, threatened, often occurs immediately after a disclosure is made, long before it ever reaches a courtroom. Think about someone speaking up in their office about their boss. They have very little formal protection at that crucial initial stage.
And the consequences of this gap are often tragic, aren't they? It must discourage people from coming forward.
Sadly, yes. The high cost of speaking out is tragically illustrated in cases mentioned in the sources, like the murder of environmental advocate and journalist Jerry Ortega, who was assassinated after exposing alleged corruption involving local officials.
That sends a chilling message.
Absolutely. The climate of impunity, where the masterminds of such attacks are rarely brought to justice, creates a powerful chilling effect and a profound disincentive for potential whistleblowers. Why risk your life or livelihood if the system won't protect you and the powerful won't be held accountable anyway?
Is anything being done about this?
Well, the research notes there are recent efforts, with support from the UN Office on Drugs and Crime, to draft a new comprehensive whistleblower protection policy. But the long-standing absence of a robust, unified law represents a fundamental failure to protect those on the front lines of the fight against corruption. It's basically a message that speaking out is dangerous.
Okay, finally, let's talk about campaign finance, which the analysis describes as the rules of a rigged game in the Philippines. This seems like a critical vulnerability where money can fundamentally distort the democratic process itself.
This is indeed a critical area, maybe a foundational crack in the entire system. The legal framework governing campaign finance, primarily the Omnibus Election Code, is described as fundamentally broken and serving to perpetuate the dominance of money in Philippine politics.
How is it broken? What's the core flaw?
A core flaw is the set of campaign expenditure limits, how much candidates are legally allowed to spend. These limits were apparently set way back in 1991 and have not been updated to reflect decades of inflation.
Not updated since 1991, so they must be tiny now.
Exactly. They are now unrealistically low, which means pretty much everyone violates them. This leads to candidates filing dishonest and incomplete statements of contributions and expenditures, or SOCEs.
So the financial reports are basically fiction.
It effectively turns the entire financial reporting requirement into a meaningless act of compliance, a box-ticking exercise, rather than a genuine exercise in transparency. It's like everyone knows the rules are impossible, so no one really follows them, and everyone just kind of winks and nods.
So the limits are so low they're impossible to follow, and then enforcement is weak too. That sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Precisely. Enforcement is described as equally weak. The Commission on Elections, COMELEC, is widely seen as lacking the necessary resources and perhaps the political will to conduct proper audits and enforce the law effectively. Sanctions for violations are rarely and inconsistently applied.
Are there loopholes too?
Plenty. Numerous loopholes exist, like the absence of clear regulations covering third-party campaigning or activities conducted before the official campaign period starts. This allows for massive amounts of unregulated dark money to flood the political system. You don't know who is funding these campaigns or what influence they're buying.
And what's the result of all this?
This broken system creates a really vicious cycle. It essentially ensures that only the very wealthy, or those backed by wealthy, often hidden interests, can compete effectively for national office.
Entrenching the elite.
Right. This not only entrenches the power of political dynasties, but also creates this complex web of indebtedness between elected officials and their donors. This fosters a political culture where public policy can, in effect, be bought and sold behind closed doors.
This truly raises an important question then. When the very tools designed for accountability, like the SALN or campaign finance rules, are twisted to prevent it or just allowed to become completely ineffective, how do you even begin to untangle that knot?
It's a huge challenge. The analysis of these institutional and legislative failures reveals a problem that goes beyond simple weakness or incompetence. The case of the SALN restrictions, for example, points to a more insidious phenomenon: the weaponization of legal and administrative procedures to actively subvert transparency and accountability.
Weaponization, that's a strong word.
But it seems apt in that case. It's not presented as a passive failure of enforcement. It seems like an active, deliberate measure by a key accountability institution, the Ombudsman, ironically, to dismantle one of the country's most important anti-corruption tools.
And what does that signify?
It represents a form of institutional capture, where an agency designed to fight corruption is potentially being used to protect the powerful from scrutiny. This understanding is critical because it implies that any successful reform agenda must not only focus on passing new laws, but must also address this deeper challenge of institutional capture and really claw back those tools for the public.
Okay. To sum up this section on the Philippine reality, we've seen how the country, despite having some robust mandates on paper, suffers from deeply entrenched corruption. It seems fueled by systemic weaknesses, incredibly inconsistent institutional performance, and actively undermined transparency mechanisms, all playing out against a backdrop of complex historical and cultural factors. It's a really stark contrast to the effective, integrity-driven ecosystems we explored in the first section.
It is. But the good news, perhaps, is that understanding the problem, this clearly also helps to illuminate the potential solutions. The diagnosis points towards the prescription.
All right, so we've moved from the ideal blueprints through the sobering diagnostic of the challenging reality in the Philippines, and now we arrive at the prescription: what can actually be done. Our research emphasizes that a successful reform agenda cannot be piecemeal. It can't just be one thing.
No, definitely not. It requires a comprehensive, multi-pronged strategy, one that simultaneously works to rebuild institutions from the top down and empower citizens to demand accountability from the bottom up.
Like a two-front war against corruption, maybe? Attacking it from both sides.
That's a good way to think about it. A pincer movement. ### foundational government actions. Top-down reforms.
Let's start with the top-down part. What are the foundational actions the government itself needs to take?
The government absolutely has to lead by initiating deep structural reforms. These actions rebuild the very foundations of integrity. They require significant political will, there's that phrase again, and are really non-negotiable prerequisites for any sustainable anti-corruption effort.
Okay, so strategic imperatives first. Rebuilding integrity. First up, developing a truly unified national anti-corruption strategy. It sounds obvious, but the diagnosis suggested this is clearly missing in practice.
Yes, the analysis suggests the government needs to move beyond its current fragmented and often, performative anti-corruption efforts. Things that look good but don't achieve much. It absolutely must develop and implement a unified national anti-corruption strategy.
And who should lead that?
Ideally, it needs to be championed at the highest level by the office of the president to signal real commitment. This shouldn't be just another bureaucratic document gathering dust on a shelf. It needs to be a living roadmap.
Modeled on?
Perhaps modeled on Finland's systematic, inclusive approach. It must have clear, measurable targets. It needs a dedicated and protected budget, crucially shielded from political whims and annual budget cuts. And it should have an oversight body composed of representatives from government, the private sector, and civil society to ensure broad buy-in and monitoring.
And it needs to tackle different types of corruption.
Critically, yes. The strategy must differentiate between and address both that petty administrative corruption that frustrates daily life and the far more corrosive grand corruption and state capture that really undermines national development. They need different approaches.
Okay, unified strategy first. Then, strengthening and insulating the Office of the Ombudsman, which we saw has had such inconsistent effectiveness. How do you turn that key institution around?
All right. To transform the Ombudsman into a consistently feared and respected graft buster, a comprehensive package of reforms is necessary. It's not just one fix.
What's in the package?
First, potentially legislative amendments to its charter, RA 6770, to grant its investigators and prosecutors immunity from harassing lawsuits, often called SLAPP suits for acts performed in the line of duty.
Why is that important?
This is a key protection to embolden them to pursue powerful figures without fear of frivolous legal retaliation designed just to intimidate or drain resources.
Makes sense. What else?
Its investigative powers should be enhanced. For example, streamlining the process for securing court orders to examine bank accounts in corruption cases could make investigations much more efficient.
And its independence. How do you guarantee that?
Most importantly, its institutional independence must be financially secured, perhaps through a fixed multi-year budget that is automatically released, thereby shielding it from the political pressures of the annual appropriations process where budgets can be cut to punish or control the office.
Secure funding, immune from political games.
Exactly. And this must be paired with sustained investment in its capacity, providing staff with world-class training in things like forensic accounting, digital forensics, complex trial advocacy. These are needed to dramatically improve case quality and boost those conviction rates. You need the tools, the protection, and the expertise.
And crucially, you also have to address that compromised immune system pursuing deep-seated judicial and police reform. This can't be an afterthought, right? It has to happen alongside strengthening the ombudsman.
Absolutely. This is a critical parallel track, truly essential. You can't fix the special forces if the regular army and the courts are broken.
So what needs to happen with the judiciary?
For the judiciary, the suggestions include a comprehensive program to significantly increase salaries to levels that dramatically reduce the temptation of bribery. Also, implementing a much more transparent and rigorously merit-based system for appointments and promotions, trying to remove political patronage from the equation.
And accountability for judges.
Critically, strengthening the judicial disciplinary system to swiftly and decisively investigate, suspend, and remove corrupt judges. There need to be real consequences for misconduct.
And the national police, that sounded like a huge challenge.
It is. For the PMP, the analysis suggests nothing short of a radical internal cleansing program will suffice to address the deep-seated issues. This must be combined with improved pay and conditions, better training, but also crucially, the establishment of a fully empowered and truly independent police oversight body.
Independent oversight.
Yes, perhaps modeled on effective examples like New Zealand's Independent Police Conduct Authority, something with real teeth to finally break the endemic cycles of extortion, abuse, and impunity that have so badly eroded public trust.
Okay, those are the big institutional reforms. Now let's talk about the legislative priorities rewriting the actual rules of the game. First, restoring and mandating digital public access to those SANs, which were so tragically neutered.
Yes, this is arguably the most critical and urgent legislative priority, according to the analysis. Congress needs to immediately pass a law that explicitly nullifies the restrictive effects of that 2020 Ombudsman circular. Get rid of that barrier.
Just go back to how it was.
Actually, the recommendation is to go further. Don't just revert to the old paper-based system. This new legislation should modernize the SALIN system entirely. It should mandate that all SALINs of public officials be digitized and published in a central, publicly accessible, and machine-readable online database.
Machine-readable. Why is that important?
So that journalists, researchers, and citizen watchdogs can actually download and analyze the data systematically, looking for patterns, red flags, conflicts of interest. It enables large-scale scrutiny.
Okay, so radical transparency through digitization.
Exactly. It aligns with international evidence on the power of public disclosure and would transform the SALIN back into a potent tool for prevention and accountability, allowing citizens and investigators to actually use the data effectively.
This isn't just about restoring what was lost. It's about making it even more powerful for you, the public, to hold officials accountable by giving you the data at your fingertips.
Precisely. The second key legislative priority is to enact a single comprehensive whistleblower protection act. That current fragmented and inadequate system just isn't working.
So replace the patchwork with one strong law.
Yes, a standalone law that provides clear, robust, and easily accessible protections. Drawing on successful models like those in Denmark and New Zealand, this law must include several key elements.
Such as?
Ironclad protection against all forms of retaliation, job loss, harassment, physical threats in both public and private sectors. The right to report wrongdoing anonymously through secure channels, because sometimes that's the only way people feel safe enough to speak up.
Anonymity is key sometimes.
Definitely. Also, the creation of an independent office or commission specifically dedicated to receiving and investigating whistleblower disclosures, acting as a safe harbor. And clear provisions for rewards or financial incentives for disclosures that lead to the recovery of significant public funds. Give people a reason to take the risk.
Okay, that sounds comprehensive. And finally, that broken campaign finance system needs a complete overhaul to truly address the rigged game of Philippine politics.
Absolutely. Congress needs to undertake a complete overhaul of the nation's campaign finance laws to try and break that toxic link between money and political power.
Where do you start?
First, immediately update those ridiculously outdated campaign expenditure limits, and crucially, index them to inflation for regular automatic adjustment in the future, so they stay realistic.
Makes sense. What else?
Introduce clear and enforceable limits on how much any single individual or corporation can contribute to a campaign. Ban all anonymous donations full stop. Require all significant contributions to be made through auditable banking channels, not untraceable bundles of cash.
Get rid of the mystery money.
Exactly. And critically, there must be a significant expansion of the legal authority and the financial resources of COMELEC's Campaign Finance Office. Empower it to conduct real-time monitoring during campaigns and rigorous independent audits after campaigns. Give the watchdog some teeth and resources.
This isn't just about fairness in elections, is it? It's fundamental to the integrity of democracy itself.
Absolutely. Clean elections are a prerequisite for clean governance. Hashtag empowering the citizenry. Bottom-up initiatives.
Okay, top-down reforms are absolutely essential building that framework. But our research really stresses that they'll ultimately fail or just remain on paper without sustained pressure and engagement from an active, engaged citizenry. So let's explore the other side of the pincer. How do we empower the citizenry with bottom-up initiatives?
Right. This is about building demand for accountability from society itself.
First, fostering a culture of integrity. This sounds like the long game, changing mindsets. How do you do that?
Building a society that is truly intolerant of corruption is indeed a generational project. And it really begins with education. The Department of Education should look at integrating anti-corruption, ethics, and civic integrity modules into the national curriculum at all levels, from primary school right up to university.
What should that curriculum include?
It shouldn't just be abstract principles. It should be grounded in the rich Philippine historical narrative, teaching students about the country's own powerful legacy of citizen-led movements against abuse of power like people power.
So connected to their own history.
Yes. The aim is to inspire a new generation to see themselves not just as passive observers, but as active participants in the project of good governance, understanding their rights and responsibilities.
And alongside education, supporting and protecting independent media and civil society. They are truly the watchdogs, aren't they? They shine the light.
Absolutely critical. A free, independent, and critical press is one of the most effective deterrents to corruption. It's the flashlight shining into dark corners. This state has a responsibility to ensure a safe and protected environment for investigative journalists to do their work without fear.
And civil society groups, the NGOs.
Both the government and international donors should look at significantly increasing funding and support for credible civil society organizations, CSOs that specialize in anti-corruption advocacy, in budget tracking, public awareness campaigns, citizen monitoring. These groups are essential partners.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, a free press and robust civil society aren't just watchdogs. They're absolutely essential nutrients for a healthy democracy, wouldn't you say?
Couldn't agree more. They provide the oxygen for accountability to truly thrive. They amplify citizen voices and translate complex issues into understandable terms.
Okay, so from fostering culture to activating social accountability, how can that powerful citizen energy we talked about, the potential shown in people power, be channeled from periodic protest into more sustained, organized participation in governance?
That's a key challenge. One way is for the government to Create formal mechanisms for citizen monitoring of public services and projects.
Formal mechanisms, like what?
This involved scaling up successful local-level initiatives. The research mentioned Project Bulichon and San Miguel Bohol as an example. This is a joint government citizen initiative that successfully monitored the distribution of agricultural subsidies, leading to improved service delivery and increased trust.
So taking local successes national.
Exactly. This model could be replicated and institutionalized nationwide by creating legally recognized platforms for accredited CSOs to participate directly in monitoring public procurement processes, infrastructure project implementation, budget execution, letting citizens look over the government's shoulder, essentially.
And supporting citizen watchdogs more broadly.
Furthermore, yes, the government should support citizen-led watchdogs by providing them with things like legal standing and, crucially, reliable access to public data in usable formats. Nonpartisan citizen groups that analyze government budgets, track campaign finance disclosures, monitor the performance of public officials, they play an invaluable role in translating raw data into public accountability. Make the data available so people can use it.
Okay, finally, leveraging technology for radical transparency. This feels like an area where innovation can really jumpstart progress, especially now.
Absolutely. Technology offers incredibly powerful tools to democratize information and truly empower citizens in ways that weren't possible before.
Like what specifically?
The government should invest in creating open government platforms. For instance, imagine a single, unified online portal that provides the public with easy, real-time, and user-friendly access to the entire life cycle of public funds.
The whole life cycle.
Yeah, from budget allocations and procurement tenders to contract awards, payments, project completion reports, maybe even photos of the finished project. All in one place, easy to search and understand.
Inspired by examples elsewhere.
It could draw inspiration from successful e-procurement reforms in countries like Bangladesh, which have radically transformed accountability in government contracting by putting everything online.
And using tech for reporting corruption, too.
Yes. To complete the feedback loop, the government should develop and promote secure, user-friendly mobile and web applications for crowdsourced corruption reporting.
Crowdsourced reporting.
Building on the spirit of past citizen journalism initiatives like Paranut and Tuprak, which means it's our money. These official platforms would allow citizens to easily report everything from demands for petty bribes in a local office to failures in public service delivery, maybe even upload photos or videos.
And the reports would actually go somewhere.
The key is a system that ensures reports are tracked, directed to the appropriate agency for action, and maybe even provide feedback to the reporter. This makes every citizen with a smartphone a potential watchdog, multiplying the eyes and ears focused on integrity.
This all sounds incredibly comprehensive, covering so many angles. But the key word that keeps coming up in the analysis, and what really seems to bind these top-down and bottom-up approaches together, is synergy. It's not one or the other working in isolation, is it?
This is absolutely right. The ultimate success of this entire ambitious reform agenda hinges on the synergy between these top-down government actions and these bottom-up citizen initiatives. They are not separate strategies, but truly two halves of a single coordinated pincer movement against corruption.
One can't succeed without the other.
Exactly. One absolutely cannot succeed without the other. Think about it. Government-led transparency initiatives, like publishing budgets online, are rendered pretty meaningless if citizens aren't organized, trained, and empowered to actually analyze that information and demand action based on what they find.
Right. Data without users is useless.
And conversely, citizen activism, no matter how passionate or well-intentioned, can easily lead to frustration, burnout, and cynicism if there are no functional and responsive state institutions to receive complaints, investigate wrongdoing effectively, and actually deliver justice. People need to see results.
And the Philippines' own history shows this.
Yes, the Philippines' own history is presented as a testament to this dynamic. Powerful bottom-up people power movements have successfully toppled corrupt regimes, a massive achievement. But the changes have often proven ephemeral, temporary.
Why?
Because the top-down institutional structures, the courts, the bureaucracy, the political system, remain largely unreformed and susceptible to capture by a new set of elites. The system didn't fundamentally change.
So how do you break that cycle?
The key, according to this analysis, is to design every reform with this synergy explicitly in mind.
Okay, give me an example. How would that work in practice?
So, for example, when a new law on procurement transparency is passed, top-down, it must be accompanied by a well-funded program to train civil society organizations, bottom-up, on how to use the new system, how to analyze the data, how to file complaints effectively.
Connecting the law to the users.
Or when a new digital channel for reporting corruption is launched, top-down, it must be co-designed with citizen groups, bottom-up, to ensure it is trusted, accessible, user-friendly, and actually meets their needs, not just what some tech person in government thinks they need.
So constant integration.
This integrated approach where state reform and citizen empowerment advance hand in hand, consistently reinforcing each other, offers the most promising path toward building a truly sustainable and corruption-resilient Philippines. It's about empowering everyone's state and citizen to be part of the solution together. Hashtag outro.
Well, the challenge of corruption in the Philippines is clearly formidable. It's deeply rooted in the nation's history, its political economy, its institutional fabric. Our deep dive today has painted a sobering picture of a system where the legal architecture for accountability has been eroded, sometimes even captured, and where core institutions of justice and oversight have been profoundly compromised.
It is sobering. Yet, as our research also shows, a clear path forward does exist. The experiences of the world's least corrupt nations, Denmark, Finland, New Zealand, Singapore, they offer not a single rigid blueprint to be copied wholesale, but a powerful set of universal principles.
Remind us of those again.
Unwavering political will, truly empowered and independent institutions, a fortified rule of law, and that architecture of proactive transparency. These principles absolutely can be adapted and applied to the specific Philippine context.
And we've seen throughout this discussion that there are no silver bullets. Success doesn't lie in just passing one single new law or creating yet another task force that might fade away.
No, the analysis points towards needing a sustained, strategic, and synergistic assault on corruption, coming from those two directions, simultaneously top-down and bottom-up.
So from the top down, the state has to lead with real courage and conviction. It must forge that unified national strategy we talked about, radically strengthen and insulate its core integrity institutions like the Office of the Ombudsman, and undertake the difficult but absolutely essential work of reforming its judiciary and police.
And it has to rewrite those broken rules, the ones governing campaign finance, whistleblower protection, the public's right to information, closing the loopholes that have, for too long, enabled impunity and shielded wrongdoing.
And then from the bottom up, the citizenry must be empowered to become the ultimate guardians of public integrity. This requires investing deeply in civic education from a young age, fiercely protecting the vital role of a free press and independent civil society.
And creating those institutionalized, trusted channels for citizens to actually monitor their government and hold it to account day to day, not just during elections or protests. Leveraging technology for radical transparency can truly transform the relationship between the state and its people.
Turning passive subjects into active, powerful participants in the work of governance.
Exactly.
The journey to a corruption-resilient nation, whether in the Philippines or anywhere else facing similar struggles, is undoubtedly long and difficult. The resistance from entrenched interests who benefit from the status quo will surely be significant.
Of course, change is never easy when power and money are involved.
But it begins with a clear vision, a comprehensive strategy, and a commitment from everyone. So perhaps the final thought for you, our listener, is this. What role will you play in demanding and supporting these essential changes, not just in the Philippines, if that's your context, but wherever integrity is challenged in your own community or country?
Because ultimately, building a more just, transparent, and prosperous future for all really does depend on it.